Hello, my name is Gregory Jones, and I published a book called The Macroeconomic Laws. And you can purchase a copy of The Macroeconomic Laws at Ex Libris, Amazon, or Barnes & Noble. Today I'd like to talk about nuclear strategy. As bizarre as the idea seems, the possibility of an all-out nuclear attack by the Soviet Union, by Russia and the United States against each other is a real possibility. Less because of the possibility of a deliberate launch, but more because of the possibility of an accidental launch. The tensions in our relations with Russia, the Russian Federation, of course, make it more difficult to de-alert the massive twin nuclear arsenals possessed by the US and Russia. And of course, it is not Russia which is being aggressive, it is the United States which is being aggressive and unfair to Mr. Putin. And of course, it is to our own detriment because the possibility of an accidental launch of the massive nuclear arsenals possessed by the US and Russia has increased. And without a de-alerting of the arsenals, this danger will remain, and it is in fact a question of time before the arsenals actually go off based on a nuclear accident. We've already had 2 nuclear accidents where we had a near launch of the arsenals, and since that time the launch window has become smaller. So of course, Mr. Putin, of course, he seeks to defend his sphere of influence. The power is by proxy from the superpowers. Russia is a superpower based on its massive strategic nuclear arsenal, as the US is. There are 2 superpowers, and the other countries are lesser powers. Russia is not a great power behaving badly. Russia is a superpower acting properly. It is the United States which is acting improperly by criticizing Mr. Putin for defending his sphere of influence in the Ukraine, in Georgia and Chechnya, and other areas. The US, of course, we're acting aggressively. We invaded Iraq, which is a former Soviet ally. We attacked Libya, which is a Russian ally, and we threatened Syria, which is also a Russian ally. And Mr. Putin, of course, he seeks to defend the ethnic Russians in the Ukraine. And Ukraine, of course, is under Russia's sphere of influence. By the way, Ukraine did not surrender its nuclear weapons easily. In fact, Russia warned them that there was danger of their nuclear weapons exploding because they were not being properly maintained or cleaned. And so Ukraine quickly gave the nuclear weapons back to Russia because they were scared of the nuclear weapons exploding on their territory, of course. And Russia, when they acquired the Ukrainian nuclear weapons, they said yes, in fact, they had not been properly cleaned. And that's why Ukraine gave up their nuclear weapons. But Ukraine is still under the sphere of influence of Russia. and just as Eastern Europe is. And the U.S. should not put lethal weapons in Poland or the Baltic states or Eastern Europe or in Ukraine. We should not give weapons to Ukraine. That would be an aggressive act towards the Russian Federation. And Mr. Obama, of course, needs to apologize to Mr. Putin for saying that he is the aggressor, and for our aggression, and for criticizing Mr. Putin for defending his sphere of influence. The United States would not like it if our sphere of influence were attacked. If Mr. Putin were to give lethal weapons to Cuba, we wouldn't like it. If Mr. Putin were to invade Canada, we wouldn't like it, would we? So we maintain our sphere of influence, and of course power is based on the superpowers and their spheres of influence, because the U.S. and Russia, of course, by weight of the massive twin nuclear arsenals, we are at war, and of course war doesn't just disappear. As long as there's tension between our countries, as long as there are disputes between our countries, we are at war. The danger is, of course, of the nuclear arsenals going off. And so we are at peace to a degree, but the arsenals remain poised and ready to launch. And they're poised and pointed at each other and ready to launch. If this isn't a state of war, I don't know what is. And so we need to de-alert the arsenals, and this can only be done by improving our relations with Mr. Putin, because without trust by the two countries, we will not politically move towards de-alerting of the arsenals. This is a psychological factor, of course, and if we were to ask Mr. Putin to de-alert his arsenal, he would say, no, you first, of course. And of course, Mr. Obama, of course, he needs to de-alert our arsenal, but if he doesn't receive a reciprocal action from the Russians, he will not go all the way on de-alerting of the arsenals. De-alerting must be a reciprocal action, and this entails a trust between the two countries that their intentions are not hostile. And so we must look at our spheres of influence to see who is the aggressor. And you see that we have invaded Iraq, of course, and Iraq was a Russian ally. And we had been behaving very aggressively. And Russia is simply defending their sphere of influence. They have ethnic Russians in the Ukraine, of course. And so here you see my book, of course, and in it I have nuclear strategy. I reprinted the paper From Nuclear Deterrence to Mutual Safety. As Russia's Arsenal Crumbles, It's Time to Act, by Sam Nunn and Richard Lugar. And additionally, I have included my own essay update on nuclear strategy. And you'll notice that missile defense is not going to save us, of course. It is time to de-alert the arsenals and to save our world from destruction, of course. Because we've already had 2 nuclear accidents. If we have another one, it's very likely that the arsenals will launch. Every Russian and American city would be incinerated, and many hundreds of millions more would die from the fallout from the radiation. And of course, what would remain would be the medium and short-range ballistic missiles nuclear tipped in the United States and Russia. So as far as the other countries seeking to seek power, they still wouldn't be able to get it, as long as the command and control structure is in place. And of course, we wouldn't be here anymore. It would do a great deal of damage, and of course, the command and control structure is in hardened silos, of course. and so it would be quite a different world, of course, and largely it would be Russian and American cities which are destroyed, of course, and the rest of the world would be under the threat of medium and short-range ballistic missiles, and it would be quite disastrous, and it's almost unthinkable. But of course, this is reality. This is what is really happening. The danger of a nuclear exchange is real, and it is, well, the danger of accidental launch has sharply increased, while the danger of deliberate launch has decreased, of course. That is, the danger of an actual launch may actually be greater now than during the Cold War. And this is, of course, danger of accidental launch because the arsenals have not been de-alerted. So I'll stop recording.